Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to another CHRO South Africa webinar. I'm Kalkelo Letsebe, Community Manager of CHRO South Africa. And I'm glad to see that people are trickling in and we're getting a full house here. Our theme for today is from paperwork to productivity. HR leaders are increasingly feeling the pressure to streamline onboarding, compliance, and training processes, while also ensuring employee engagement and operational efficiency. Traditional and manual processes can be time-consuming and at times error-prone and difficult to scale for most, especially in organizations with multiple offices. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce this webinar possible and have partnered with us, CHRO South Africa, to explore a conversation on how digital solutions can transform onboarding and training processes and automate administrative tasks, as well as improve compliance tracking and enhance learning experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, today you'll be hearing from CleverLMS Enterprise Account Executive, Asyl, who will show teams how they can free up their available time by reducing paperwork and creating a seamless and engaging journey for new hires as well as existing employees. You will also hear from Eshwin, the CHRO at Into Food, and Ross Pickford, the head of people at Global Kinetic, who will share on breaking free from paperwork and smart hacks for HR. Let's get the webinar started. And to kick off, let me hand over to CleverLMS Enterprise Account Executive, Asyl Philip. Asyl?
Thank you, KG. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ross, Eshwin. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us over. Give me a couple seconds and then I will start sharing my screen and we'll get this get going.
No worries, Asyl.
Okay, I believe everyone should be able to see my screen now.
We are.
Yes? Okay, perfect. I'll put this away a little bit. It doesn't get in the way. All right, so it's my pleasure to talk about how we can go from less paperwork to more productivity and how we can make our processes, how we can work smarter and not harder. And so this is about how technology can help, help us with that. Employees are the greatest asset of a company, and we place their well-being and success in the capable hands of human resources, and that's a very important role, right? But HRs have a lot on their plate, and their responsibilities go beyond hiring, and as a matter of fact, hiring is just the beginning. Now, all aspects of managing, a healthy talent pipeline to, aligning or nurturing employees into these agile and resilient teams that are able to adapt to ever-changing environment, or aligning individual employee career goals with those of the business, managing compliance, you name it. They're the role of an HR in the organization has, or the expectations of an HR's role in the organization has dramatically changed over the last 10, 15, 20 years ago. When I was much, much younger, I used to think HRs were there just to handle payroll and conflict resolution. And obviously things have changed a lot since then. So human resources, the role has evolved from a primarily administrative function to a strategic business partner, playing a pivotal role in driving sustainable growth. Can you hear me?
Yes, there we can.
Yes, we're able to hear you, Asyl.
Sorry, I'm having some kind of a. Just give me a second. I think it might be my internet connection. Couple of seconds.
No worries.
Mm-hmm.
While we're waiting for Asyl to get her presentation ready, I'd encourage you to prepare your Q&As and put them in the chat box, where we'll be able to ask Asyl a few questions after her presentation. Thank you.
Am I back on? Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Please just reshare. There we go.
Okay, okay. Can you see my screen now? I
Yes.
apologize for the technical hiccups. So yes, we were saying that HR's role in the organization has evolved and changed dramatically over the last decade or so. And yet astounding, there's so many HRs that are still facing this astounding amount of administrative burden, whether it's endless paperwork, outdated processes, redundant, repetitive tasks, right? So on the one hand, we expect HRs to handle all of this operational overload, leading to inefficiencies and frustration. On the other hand, we expect HRs to be these strategic people in culture institutions. So there's definitely a discrepancy here. And so part of the work overload, seems to be coming from managing continuously these staff trainings and compliance reporting. And so based on the conversations with HRs, there seems to be a pattern where businesses are investing so much, they're doing so much on, they're investing so much into skills training and development, but not enough in new hire onboarding. And yet onboarding is such a fundamental, such a important, essential component of a talent life cycle. And as a matter of fact, it's the first step to building that, learning culture in the organization. So we need a solution that helps HRs, that allows HRs to break free from the administrative burden, a solution that will help them make those strategic, data-driven decisions. And surprisingly, leveraging technology is the only way to effectively overcome these obstacles. And so the goal is to go high tech and low effort. And today I want to talk about how LMS, and in particular CleverLMS, can help overcome those obstacles effectively. So I think majority of the population or majority of the audience today here is familiar with what LMS is, and perhaps you've even implemented one in your company. For those of you who are new, Learning Management System is a digital training platform that helps manage, deliver, and track training processes in your company. Essentially, you can think of it as your training command center. And so, give or take, there are three main functions of an LMS, and that's really like about structuring and standardizing your learning materials so that you're consistently delivering the same message across different, groups of people, locations, etc. The second one is really building your centralized learning hub. So all of the training, interventions, learnings, imagine having one consolidated place to store information and data about your internal, external, online, and offline trainings. And the final part, which is, tracking and employee progress, performance, and streamlining those into ready-to-use reports, right? So these are at the very heart of the LMS. So you might be asking, well, wait, you're supposed to alleviate all of the tasks from us, and you're just adding more to our to-do list. But here I like to quote one of my favorite authors, the writers, Greg McKeown, who's the author of Essentialism and Effortless, who said, if you set up a one-time process, you get a linear result, and then you have to repeat it over and over again every time you have a similar situation. Much like a single-use tableware, right? It serves the job, does the purpose, for occasional picnics and celebrations. But if you're home and using tableware on a regular basis, it doesn't make any sense. Although my husband would argue, because for him anything better, it's better than to doing the dishes manually. But we have solved this problem by investing in a dishwasher. And so now we're enjoying this residual result every time we run the smart machine, because it has more AI than probably my laptop does. And so, which is a perfect example of technology and AI, right? Freeing us from mundane, manual household chores so that we can go and do something creative, like write a book or paint an art. So, the first step is really sit down and think about all of the steps, activities, and tasks that you do to fully onboard a new hire or to start a training, to do anything, and think ask yourself, can it be digitized? Can it be simplified, right? So the main goal about automation is to set up a process, once, to invest the time and effort to set up a process so that it can be used repeatedly and that you can reap the benefits over and over again. As a British mathematician once said, and I apologize, forget the name of it, of the person, as many essential activities and tasks should be automated. So let's go for it. Now, how does CleverLMS help automate training and, in particular, onboarding? And I like to say that onboarding and compliance are actually the perfect examples of automating, because these are the types of trainings that can be generalized, right? When you go into the skills training and personal development plans, that's where you actually need to be more strategic, more personalized, more customized, based on the person's, skills sets and let's say training needs analysis and competency assessments. But onboarding and compliance is where you can go really, really just make the most of the automation. In learning, were there any questions? All right, there's some background noise. All right. So the first thing, once you've kind of sat through and thought about all of the steps that you could simplify and digitize, and we take this process very seriously. We actually sit down and talk about this with our customers all the time, because nobody knows your business better than you do. And we know the technical capabilities of our system the best, right? And so we sit down and talk about how we can maximize and make the most of our system to meet your specific business needs. So once you kind of set through and done the groundwork, there are two ways to go, right? So either we go with just the standalone LMS and you create a user profile, and then that sets off a certain, like a whole chain of events, like a domino effect, right? Without you doing anything, because you've already set up this process, and then this can be on repeat. Or if you have an HR system, then this would be ideal, is actually integrating with your HR system. And at this point, as soon as you add the person to a payroll, that can send off a message to the LMS and then trigger off, trigger all of the chain of actions that will now happen without your intervention. So what does that mean? That means that the person will get automatic access to his learning hub and knowledge base. Learning hub that contains all the training materials from onboarding, whether it's with your onboarding tracks of with 30, 60, 90-day milestones, or whatever onboarding structure that you stick to, and a knowledge base that stores all of the information, like your employee handbooks, your SOPs, your company policies, frequently asked questions, HR forms. All of this will be available in a one-stop shop place. Next up is really just, e-confirmations. What are these? These are essentially your digital sign-off sheets, where people, HRs usually go out chase people around to sign a paper. Well, you can do this online. We actually do this quite often. We just don't notice it. We accept the new terms and policy changes of all of the software and the apps that we use constantly. It's legally binding, basically. The next one is really just making use of the leaderboards, engagements. Again, these are all automated gamification functionalities that keeps the employee, the learner, engaged and motivated and keep wanting more. And one of the things that I really like about onboarding and new hires is that new employees will be so passionate. They will be so avid. They're such avid learners that will absorb everything that you share with them, right? Because there's this, drive to learn as much as possible and to do well. And the final one is obviously the comprehensive reporting. We'll definitely talk about this a little bit more in the further slides, but ability to track progress, ability to be able to get the statistics and streamlined statistics that you can use to make data-driven decisions, to make strategic decisions. This is something that also one of the key aspects and components and should be automated as much as possible. So now the next is really, I want to share some of the onboarding and training hacks that have been so generously shared by our customers and partners, and some things that have worked for us. This is really something what I call tried and true and based on a true story. So onboarding automation, obviously it makes sense, right? Onboarding is such an important step. It's like many in sports, right? How you start, the first few seconds will determine how you'll finish. And that's exactly what onboarding is. There's so many things that can go wrong, and you've already spent so much time and money into finding the right person, hiring the right person. You want to give them the maximum advantage to do well and to actually stay with your company. And that's why we place such an importance on onboarding. You don't want them to get disillusioned that this job is either too hard for them or too easy and they don't see any career prospects. You want them to get the most out of it so that at the end of your onboarding, they come out wanting even more, wanting to even, do better, basically, grow with you, grow with the company. So with onboarding, when you automate this process, like I said, it becomes a seamless, a welcoming journey for the new hire, but almost an effortless one for the HR teams. And that's really just like, for instance, for us, we thought of like, okay, so we need those sign-off sheets, the cybersecurity trainings for IT, any of the forms, we have digitized them all, collecting documents. Our new employees actually submit their documents through an LMS platform as opposed to us collecting them over email. And one of the things that we also have created is a first aid checklist. And I have a story for this about the checklist. So there's, I've read once a story about how Boeing lost a huge military contract because their pilot didn't have a checklist to follow. Now, the full story goes is that Boeing and two other runners for the project, they were doing this test flight to demonstrate the aircraft's capability to a Department of Defense. And an experienced pilot who was actually flying, he relied solely on his memory and forgot to enable one of the levers. Flight test ended in a disastrous crash. Nobody survived, and Boeing lost the contract. But fast forward a few years, Boeing did eventually get the contract, but now every single pilot, regardless of their experience and knowledge, has to follow a checklist, right? And it would be for me comforting to know that every time I fly, one of the pilots are following a checklist. So it just shows that how trivial, how simple things like a checklist can really make a great impact and make a difference. Microlearning. Now, I think it almost has gotten a bad reputation where we think of TikTok kind of like, but microlearning, not all of it is created equal, right? And why it's important to create this bite-sized type of information is because the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, right? And so what we want to do is we want to break it up as much as possible so that it's easier to digest. I mean, I've seen microlearning that's 30 minutes long or 5 minutes long. So it's really up to you, whatever works best. What would seem like a simple way to do is uploading a PDF, a 20-page PDF. But instead of doing that, use your LMS's capability. In our LMS, for instance, we have a built-in course constructing tool, and most LMSs will have as well. Is instead of uploading a PowerPoint slide with 60 slides or PDF with 20 pages, try to break it up into chapters and sections and incorporate it with media and graphs and tables and whatnot, because all of that will help internalize information better and also retain knowledge better. I actually, just recently had this, what we call the e-learning or LMD's, let's say Bible. It's 12 Mayer's 12 Principles of Multimedia Learning, basically. That was developed about 20 years ago, but it's still highly relevant today. And one of our experts in the L&D community shared this recently on LinkedIn. I said, oh, this is so timely. I have to share this during a webinar. It basically talks about how you can create this, multi-format, multimedia content and make it so engaging, make it so relatable and relevant, and help people learn better. So if you are like many of our clients have no experience in creating e-learning content, that will be a good solid ground to start off on. And you don't have to be a professional instructional designer to apply those principles. So let me know if any of you are interested. We'll be happy to share the link to those principles after the webinar. The next step is about how we need to, just kind of try to overcome our perfectionism. I think there's one sitting in, deep down in every one of us. But one of the insights that has been shared recently with a client is that perfection is an obstacle to is an impediment to progress, right? We're constantly, we don't think that the content that we're creating is not good enough. And people or companies that have done pilot projects or, beta testing, they've seen much more engagement and much more knowledge retention or adoption when they have done it this way, the imperfect way, as we like to call it. And, to this one, I've recently worked with a client. She's based in Australia. She's been a business owner for about 20 years, and she wanted to start using the LMS to deliver product training because obviously traveling across the country has becoming to all the different destinations too overwhelming. And so she did the math and she's like, okay, investing in LMS is going to be significantly cheaper than hiring a full-time trainer. And so what she did, and this is amazing, in a week's time, she came up with a course consisting of 10 sentences, 2 multiple choice quizzes of 5 questions each, and 3 videos that were recorded on her iPhone. And when I asked her, are you sure? She said, yes, because that's what my clients are asking. And I will fine tune it and I'll perfect it based on the feedback that I get from learners. And I thought, this is just genius. So, let's, this also reminds me of how the co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman once said, if you're not embarrassed by your product, you've launched it too late, right? So that let's embrace the imperfection and move forward. So the next up is one of my, what I like to call the gamification is all about finding the right balance. We're actually accepting that work and play can coexist. But I personally like to use the word incentivized training. And there's so many ways, so many examples of incentivized training that our customers have shared with us, and some things that have worked for us as well. And, when it comes to learning, I think carrot always works better than the stick, right? This one particular client who's also in IT, they've taken a very creative approach to their reward system. So in CleverLMS, we have this very interesting, recognition of rewards and, points system that is, basically, so this client was using this approach where majority of the bulk of the points that users could get is from learn and earn. Basically, for all of the trainings they complete, you get a point. But the actual one step further is that all of the managers were empowered to assign additional points for best teamwork, for best project, or for best mentor. And and then those points, the credits, can be exchanged for items for an employee-only exclusive gift store. Now, you cannot just go and buy or get any of the items from the gift store. They can only be obtained for an exchange, for your rewards credits, and that creates an exclusivity, that creates a value, and of items being limited. And it was such a huge success for someone who's already gotten all of the items in the gift store, has earned all of the badges and rewards. They have a very plain or simple T-shirt that says "I have it all." It actually sounds a little different in a different language, but The idea is there. And I think there's only one person who's come this far, but he's a true legend in the company. Every time he wears that shirt, people will come up to him and ask him how he's done it, how long is it, it's taken him, what are the things that he had done, and then just like all excited and geared up to follow his steps. I mean, it's just a great story, great use of a gamification functionalities. The next one is really more about mobile first learning, and the reason why we say mobile first is that even if your employees are majority but mainly office based, we still encourage them to use the mobile app, and the reason being is that adults simply spend a lot of time with our phones, right? So we're commuting to work, we text our colleagues on WhatsApp, we check our emails on phones. And then in the middle of this, and I love this, how my Amazon app will send me a kindly reminder that I forgot something in my cart and I should buy it before stocks, run out. And the next thing I know, I'm shopping, not reviewing the document that has been sent to me by email. So you get the idea, is that we spend a lot of time on our phones, and when we're struggling, when our days are so packed, overflowing inboxes, they're constantly juggling priorities and multiple tasks. It's so easy to miss the email that comes, with an important message, or something tells us and we just get distracted and we forget it. But with phones, we get these push notifications, reminders. CleverLMS has a very interesting way of, first of all, doing some preset reminders where you schedule those reminders to be set in certain time and date. And then there's like random automatic reminders by the system, so that when you've started a training but haven't completed it, the system will remind you. And getting them and seeing them on your mobile, on your phone, will instantly remind you that, oh, I need to go back and redo it because maybe you had left it off, you had to take an urgent call and you forgot to complete it. So, and the final one is, I hope I'm right on time and not not really keeping track, but this will be the last one. So this is complete employee profiles. This is actually going back to the reporting. And this is a constant work in progress, because there is no one size fits all solution, right? Every business is unique. Every business has unique statutory requirements, and especially when it comes to South Africa. So, work with your vendor, work with your LMS partner, get the reports right from the very beginning. Ask them how you want the reports to look, and how you want them to be able to extract it. Because what I'm seeing is that there's a report that LMS gives you, but it's completely unusable. And then there's Excel spreadsheets that HRs are still compiling, with all of the demographics, whether it's for your WSPs and ATRs and triple Bs, I mean, all of the other different compliance, right? So this has been a very, a good experience for us as well in terms of working with our South African clients, is that getting to know their CETA requirements, what they need in terms of their reporting compliance. So with one, for instance, we had been able to add additional fields to expand and accommodate the additional demographic, for instance, data, right? So that they don't have to compile it in the Excel spreadsheet. So it's a constant work in progress, and it does help with, the ability to, if your LMS vendor does have the ability to customize reporting, then make use of it, because nothing is more time consuming, nothing is more overwhelming and frustrating than doing thousands of rows of Excel spreadsheets. So hopefully this has been an insightful and inspiring presentation for you, something that I wanted to share from our personal experience, but also from the experience of our customers, and would love to continue our discussion together with my colleagues. Thank you so much, all.
Thank you, Asyl, for such an insightful presentation. We do have a few minutes for a Q&A from the audience. I will be launching a poll, if you could all just answer. It should be appearing on your screens at the moment. In the interim, I'll ask the first question, Asyl. I like the slide that said better done than perfect. What are some of the common mistakes that organizations have come with the hesitance to start and try create a paperless solution for their employees.
Thank you for your question, AKG. Do you mean in relation to creating the content itself, training
Yes.
materials? Yes.
Yes.
The common mistake that I see is that there's the lack of understanding between what works on paper on PowerPoint and what works on e-learning platform. These are different ways of delivering content, and what works for one doesn't work for the other, right? So, and here my recommendation would be, again, work with, if you don't have an in-house L&D or instructional designer, work with your LMS provider, work with your partner, and they will be able to guide you what's the best way to take what you have already and put it into a digital format.
All right. We have another question in the chat. Can onboarding access start before an employee's first day after signing the offer letter?
Absolutely, that's a great question. I've actually, was hesitating about whether I should mention it on, but I took it out. But there's a term, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called pre-boarding, and we like to practice it a lot. It's a perfect way to prepare your new employee before the first day, right? Sharing all of that information, and with LMSs, you can really kind of like manage what type of content they first get access to as part of their pre-boarding as opposed to onboarding. This is a great way. The first day they come in, now I've taken personally have my onboarding journey has actually been a lot taken advantage of the pre-boarding. I knew a lot about the company, my job, the expectations, the people, my team. It's yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Asyl. Any more questions from before we jump into the panel discussion? Are there any more questions in the chat box? All right. It seems like, oh, wait. I think I'm
Mercy. Yes, pre-boarding also shows the incoming employee, the organization's culture. Absolutely.
organization's mind and hearts first, correct. All right, thank you, everyone. The next part of our webinar will be the panel discussion, amply titled Breaking Free from Paperwork, Smart Hacks for HR. We can jump into it. Let me start with Ross. Ross, if I could ask, how can HR professionals achieve 100% paperless environments while also maintaining a clear balance between digital and human interaction?
Thanks. That's a good question. So we're a software engineering company. We build software. So obviously we have a bunch of very technical people who don't really want to sign documents and file things. So I think the journey for us started thankfully before lockdown sort of happened, but since moving remote, we had to embrace that entirely. So all contracts, any legal documents, NDAs, all had to be signed electronically, which is great. And then the system that we had implemented in about 2018 has sort of an LMS capacity. It's not a pure LMS system. And we use another external one for security training as well. So a lot of our stuff is thankfully presented. I think it's Asyl, as you were saying, we do a lot of the pre-boarding parts. When someone starts, we can get them to sign those contracts and documents before they start. Depending on the role, we can start letting them have access to certain training and culture modules so they can learn a bit more about the company, what they're going to be doing, the team they're going to be working in. So there's some really, really good pieces there. And I think there was a question in the Q&A about how do you encourage an employee to complete these things, especially when it comes to the training parts. And that is always, I think that's always a friction point in the company, right? Because training and onboarding and, right, please watch these 19 PowerPoint slideshows and this long hour-and-a-half discussion that someone's given on a video about our security ring-fenced something or something about technology. If you can break it into those sort of micro-learning pieces and you can deliver it in an interesting way that engages you, that really helps. So the digital and physical face-to-face, the sort of human interaction still needs to happen as well. I think in our world, we have found that you can put everything online. You can make everything digital. Watch this video, complete this survey, take this little quiz. But if you lose that, let's you and me sit down together and talk. So you can do little quizzes and tests, but often it just have someone say, right, so you've seen this, you've absorbed this content, you've gone through this process, you understand this thing. Now let's have a chat. Let's talk about it, and actually keep that human interaction in place. So I think as a company, we've managed to largely go paperless in the sense that we don't have to sign forms and have a filing cabinet anymore of paper. We have digital stores, and most of them now in one repository. We still have a few repositories we're trying to link, and there's another challenge when you started somewhere but not entirely in one area, is making sure you have a single home for these things. But our thing is just about making sure we know what the gaps are, that you haven't left something out, and keeping a bit of human touch involved. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Eshwin into the chat has gone mobile friendly and has brought some innovative strategies and smart hacks when going paperless. Do you care to tell us more about it, please? I think you're still on mute, Eshwin.
There we go. Sorry for that. Could you just repeat that first part? You were just there's just a break in the transmission.
Connection.
Yes.
I would just know what Into Foods has done to go paperless. I understand that you've gone mobile friendly and are using a system that's already in existence to create a paperless solution for your employees.
Yeah, I think yes. I think first and foremost, it starts with understanding what I call the kind of ecosystem is that you want to operate in, and where you are actually, what we want to achieve out of that. So now, first and foremost, we basically built our systems and our digital processes, HR digital processes around understanding our colleagues' inherent needs. So what is it that colleagues are actually after when they want to interact with the company, interact with their own data, and the interfaces that they want to use, right? And what are those make sense to replace with digital versions, and what is actually worthwhile to keep as a paper contact, or I think like Ross, as you've mentioned, a physical contact with a colleague, because you do not want to you don't want to digitize the whole colleague experience to a digital interface, right? So we've gone and get receive feedback from colleagues on what is it that they inherently want to do, and some of our outcomes in our business was around something like time. That colleagues want time, right? And how can we create a system where there is more time allocated to colleagues? Now, our colleague demographic is 98% deskless. So the traditional digital tools like email, PCs, and all of laptops, that really don't gets penetration, because our colleagues for most of their workday would not have access to that. And the times that they do have access to that is their own time. It's either during a certain shift, or post their shift, or pre their shift, to interact with human resources or their line managers, etc., to address issues that is important to them or even critical to them, but might not be the most critical point, agenda point for that HR administrator or line manager at that given point in time. So it's really about understanding what is it that our colleagues need, and how we can address that requirement for them, and then how can we maximize the value of time for them. And if the digital solutions also can address issues on addressing disposable income, so people don't have to lose time as a matter, if they're time workers, to interface actually to sort out an issue on a payslip, or understand what the communication is related to the overtime, etc., then that is value added back to the colleague in hand. So, and a simple process, and maybe that's worthwhile, that that we look at is four components of that ecosystem. Is the people, like I've spoken to, the data that is available, the data in the systems, the hardware that we use and explore, and of course business processes, how the business processes align with those. So looking at that four components, and we kind of took like I said, pragmatic around it. If a colleague wants access to something, as an example, a payslip, right? Why do they need that payslip, and what do they need that for? And so how do we make that access simpler and available to them? Because like we look at, okay, diskless, how can we eliminate timesheets as an example, where colleagues can have a real-time live view on their time worked, the earnings that they've accumulated over the period of that time, that pay period. And how do we also get to colleagues that's perhaps technology agnostic, right? That just doesn't want to use a cell phone, that doesn't want to use technology, and how do we bridge that gap with them? Because I mean, you can have the greatest LMS system or HRIS systems with the digital interfaces, but if colleagues just don't use it, then it's basically a white elephant. So, and then how do we work around the perception of time that some of these tasks require? Because it's very different if you as an individual go to somewhere and interface and work with something, because then the perception of time is, it didn't really cost me time, or I didn't spend time on it, or I didn't really spend time signing on 50 timesheets. But if I now have to follow a workflow process on a digital system, all of a sudden there's an allocated time slot of my workday that needs time to do. So how do we address that perception of time in the people space? So it's that's around the people. With our wage payslips as an example that I quite like to use, we kind of implemented a process of digital payslips, all right? And so digitizing payslips, and a simple example, I hope that everyone on this call doesn't have a repeat of this anywhere in their business in any way or form. But in some areas of our business, before we moved to digitize payslips, and it took up to 2 days for our HR colleagues to fold physical payslips, right? So there's technologies out there with base printers and so forth. Some of these areas didn't have those in place, so we kind of bridged that gap. Instead of putting a printer in place, actually transfer that onto a digital platform. We kind of looked at what is most useful, and then again by colleague feedback. So the most used application by most colleagues is WhatsApp, right? And instead of designing a very clever app and all of that, we use those platforms that colleagues are readily using already. The most resistance we actually got in this process was not from colleagues, but from line managers that carry a perception that colleagues to have no access to technology, or are not capable of utilizing those technologies, but it's just tapping into what is already in use and understanding the inherent needs. So what are colleagues actually requiring and wanting? And by addressing that, you get leverage to do more things, to do more creative elements of digitizing processes. The same carries on for simple elements like leave, right? So instead of having now to sign a leave form, get it printed somewhere in the business, hopefully meet the line manager when he's available, etc., and the time cost of that versus having that ready available on an application. So you can apply for leave on your way home, right? Or when you're sitting on your couch at home, rather than having to spend your time to do that in an office-based environment, or trying to find a line manager that can actually approve all of that. And you also have line of sight, actually, what's my leave balance? What's the cost of this leave that I'm going to take? And make decisions around that. So it's really about that. And then on the data side, our data is very interesting, because I kind of put it in 3 buckets. So there's known data, right? We know we have data and we know we have it available, right? So we can utilize that. But there's also unknown data, right? We don't know what we actually need, but it is available somewhere in the system, all right? But we don't know how to use it. We don't need to how to utilize it. And then there's the one that's both unknown and it's unavailable. So it's new learning, it's new development that we have acquired. So to maximize the efficiencies of paperless systems and systems in general is understanding those three elements. So what is the data we can readily use and get leverage from and what's the data that's already available to all of us, but we don't know it yet. So how do we access that with the right knowledge? And then the last one is a bit more exploratory. So gaining those unknown processes and understanding. And again, I guess sessions like this gives us a bit of input to say, okay, what do we don't know that we can leverage from, or what do we already have in our own business that we can leverage from as well? Hardware, it's quite simple. So if the hardware is not accessible, if it's not easy to use, if it's not readily available, how do you acquire it? How do you address that? And we've actually looked at partnering with mobile services networks to assist colleagues who would not necessarily be able to gain access to cellular contracts or digital contracts where they can have a updated, fairly newer phone that can run the newer versions of most applications and data requirements, plus bundled data packages, because all of this, if you go digital, the one of the first things is, well, data, right? How do we get access to data? So besides having Wi-Fi access at all our factories for all colleagues, free Wi-Fi access for all colleagues at our operations. We're also working with mobile providers to actually provide discounted bundle packages. So by creating a kind of a safe landing for the network, saying that, well, our colleagues are employed by us and they earn a regular monthly salary. Colleagues gain access to newer devices that allows the technological revolution to happen a little bit faster within our businesses, because more people then have access to that. And the secondary upside to that, instead of spending on average 800 Rand on pay-as-you-go data bundles and airtime packages that most of our colleagues do, they now get that access at half the cost of that with equivalent data and airtime bundle. So it's looking at solutions like that can is also benefit for colleagues, and then ultimately as a benefit for us as the organization as well as we progress through our technology. And that makes just the digital adaptation a bit easier, and colleagues more open to accepting applications that we push from the business side, because we facilitating the access to the digital devices as well. And then, of course, business processes, which in many cases are very complex, has many controls in place, and a lot of governance hurdles that everyone. So it becomes this 17-page document with lots of intelligent language, but it's difficult for colleagues to interpret, and then to make that practical in application when we convert to new processes like digital adoption processes. So it's really working on redefining business processes to make sure it's simplified, it's streamlined, and it's adaptable to new scenarios that we approach. And that's really the journey. And I often say it's not just a once-off. Okay, we now digitally transform and we're happy to where we are. It's a continuous process of adapting, understanding, and learning where the colleagues are, what the needs are, and how we can add processes, not full drop a full redesign of every process in the business, but as the need arises and as the need arises and can be addressed for both the colleague and the business, we seek to deliver into those.
Thank you, Eshwin, for that extended explanation of how you went about it into foods. It really sounds fascinating. Asyl, I would like you to jump in here and maybe touch on what Eshwin spoke about: change management and resistance and legacy issues. What would you advise our listeners and audience today on how to overcome some of those issues?
It's a good question. Thank you, KG. I think, with any new initiative, right? It's all about communication. It's all about the message that gets sent out and how you position it and to what extent leadership is invested in. It may, if it's top-down approach, it may come as a disruption. It may come as and cause friction and opposition and rejection. But I think if you see if leadership of the company, of the organization comes out with a clear message of explaining why we're doing this, because at the heart of every initiative there has to be a why, right? And why, how is this going to help us? When people understand the reason, they will be more accepting, they will be more welcoming, they will be more ready, and it becomes more of a change management, if anything, right? More than as not disruption. And that's a whole different story. But any change management comes with clear, positive communication, I think, and start and prepare. I've worked with a client that, had to completely go from Salesforce to another, software that we were offering. And she started communicating about this new technology way before she started working on it. So it talks, right? And then who you involve, engage. A lot of the times our initiatives fail, not because they're bad or people are just not, ready or they don't want change. People do want, that's the only way we can grow and evolve. But because it just lacks a little bit of marketing, right? Communication. I think that's taken the approach. So that's my take on it.
All right. Ross, your thoughts on this, on the change management and the legacy issues?
Ross, you're muted.
Yes, I thought I pressed it. I hadn't quite clicked. Being a technologically sort of, I would say, advanced company, most people are quite they prefer to move on to something that is tech-based. So that's one resistance we don't have. But Eshwin, you touched on time. Time is critical anywhere. So whether it's time because the only time you can do it is on a shift, or in our case, if you're writing code and you're already in planning meetings and stuff, suddenly to fill out some document or watch some security compliance video, that takes time. But one of the parts that I think has been most successful is training and development internally, because training in anything that you train in software, that's one of the areas that we haven't consolidated entirely, because we have different people in different technologies. So that's not the training that people are doing is usually third-party based. So if you're a Microsoft developer, you're going to be doing some Microsoft training. If you're Java based, you're doing some Oracle. You're doing, we're bringing in different providers and making things that this is something we approve of. It fits our strategic goal of getting to this certification level as a company or as individuals. But the ownership of training is always your own. So every person has their own, because you take that with you. So if you get qualified as a advanced Azure Microsoft technician or a Google Cloud technician, that's something you take with you. We don't own that. And that's I think quite a nice thing to have, is to have that ownership. So those things that do take time, it might move into your personal time, is hopefully something that is still beneficial to you. So it might strategically align with the business, but it's part of something that you will have for yourself. And when people have that desire to grow themselves, that helps the whole change management a lot, because then you're going, well, this is how we're going to do this process. This is how it's happening. I do need you to fill in this. This is how you're going to apply for your leave on this system. And this is how you're going to track your training and upload things afterwards, so that we can consolidate. But that sort of ownership and adoption of it is really made more frictionless if it's something that you buy into for yourself. So this training that has been sort of presented to you is something that is for you, that you will take. So if you leave us tomorrow, you don't revoke the fact that you are now a certified or qualified person in a certain area, which I think is great. And that also helps. And I think we touched very loosely on it, but the culture of your business is defined by us as people. Hence, I'm very enjoy the human interaction part more. But you can also, you can flatten your culture and kind of make it very boring if everything is automated and online only, to your point. So it's always great that when these things are there, that also can highlight your cultural thing, the why. I think we just spoke about the why is important. Why are we choosing to do this step? What is that going to do for you and the business? Because the reality is, the business, we always look at it that we're a people first business as much as we possibly can, because we don't exist without our people. And if it's just about the business wants this goal, that if you don't buy into that, you're just a number and you're not going to be along for the ride. So it has to be about, we want to do this as a business, but how do we encourage people, and how do our systems and our processes make sure that people can take control of their own life and drive themselves forward? So when they leave us, and everyone does leave at some point, they leave better than when they started, but with fond memories and a positive outlook of their time with us.
Right. I can't believe the hour's gone by so quickly.
Oh, wow.
Something that you wanted to do, and you wanted to say before we wrap up and close up the webinar?
No, it's been a pleasure of mine to get to share the panel today with Ross and Eshwin. And Eshwin, your example of digitization is absolutely amazing. I think if there's a case story, I'd love to read it. Or if you don't, then you should.
Yeah, no.
No, that's a really great one. Yes. And KG, thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. Eshwin, some closing thoughts from you?
Yes, for me, it's just to assess where you are as a business, because we all are in different places. Like Ross said, they tech savvy, we probably less so, but there is a solution for each organization. And I think, Asyl, you mentioned it earlier, is just get started. Just get started with one element of it, pilot it, try it, and grow from there, and learn from it, and grow from there. So I think that's how to embrace all of the change that's happening around us with AI and all of that. It's just be open to learning and developing it from there for your organization.
Right. Ross?
Yeah,
the last of your thoughts?
The last word. Yeah, I think I'd also like to echo what Eshwin said earlier. The big thing in any of these journeys, whatever we do as businesses, it needs to be in consultation with our people, because the people on the ground that are doing this stuff are doing it for the success of ourselves. So if you want to give them digital pay slips and you want to give them online, is it in a format that they can consume regardless of their role? But as I said, if it's how do you make that we're trying to remove friction. So automation is hopefully to remove friction from a process. Anything you're repeating over and over again, automate it in some way and bring in a system. But that friction must also come with easy adoption for those that need to do it. So yeah, so thanks for Eshwin for the ideas there, and Asyl for that presentation, because there's some really great
absolutely.
stuff there. So,
just if I may add, just the last point. I mean, the whole point of automation, of creating these streamlined processes, is for our teams to be more people-oriented, right? So that we have more time for ourselves so that we can get on those one-on-ones instead of spending on some of the redundant tasks. So I absolutely agree with you, Ross, and it's just absolutely, yeah. I mean, people first, people oriented. We want to be more human oriented, human touch. Yeah. And that's why we need the automation for the tasks that don't require us.
Don't need that, exactly.
Indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for imparting your knowledge to our audience. And to the audience, thank you for taking your time out to join. We will pass on some of your details to Asyl to share her slide if she's comfortable with that, and there will definitely be a recording and it will be shared with everyone. Thank you, everyone from CHRO South Africa and myself, Khagelo. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day further.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
everyone in the audience.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Good day. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.